This is just a little bit, few little tricks to help you with your integer addition and subtraction and a little bit of percents. So this is for week two, or I mean lesson two, so it's week three actually. Okay, there's two basic integer addition rules. The first rule is for when you're adding things with the same signs. This is this math we do every day. First, what you're going to do is ignore the signs, then you're going to add, and then the answer gets the signs that you started with. So what this tells us is this is 9 plus 5 equals 14. Like I said, this is the math you do every single day. These are both positive numbers. If there's no sign out here, that means it's positive. So these are both positive numbers. When you add them together, 9 plus 5 is 14. Your answer is positive because these both started positive. Not very hard. You already know how to do that. But some people get confused on the negatives. So if we added a negative 5 or 9 plus a negative 5, then what happens is we're also adding same signs, two negatives. So we ignore those negative signs for a minute. Then we add 9 plus 5 is 14, and our answer becomes negative because we started out both negatives. It goes along with the lesson that if you have this negative and you get more negative, you're going to have more negatives, right? Okay, so let's look at a couple of examples of that. So I'm adding two negatives. They're the same, which means I'm going to add 3 plus 5 is 8, and then the answer is negative because we started out negative here. Negative 6 plus negative 7, 6 plus 7 is 13, and that becomes negative because we started out negative, right? There's my negative sign. Okay, so that's for adding. The next one is when we have, that's for adding same signs. This one's for adding different signs. So when we have different signs, we're going to ignore the signs again. Then we're going to subtract, and the answer is going to get the sign of the bigger addend. What that means is it's that tug of war. Who wins the tug of war? We talked about that in the lesson this week. So negative 9 plus 5. I have different signs. That means I'm going to subtract these two numbers. 9 take away 5 is 4. And then I look and see which one's bigger. Who won the tug of war? The negatives won the tug of war because there were 9 negatives and only 5 positives. And so this answer becomes negative 4. All right, let's look at these. 3 plus 5, again, we have different signs, a positive here, a negative here, so I'm going to subtract. So same, add, different, subtract. So I'm subtracting 5 take away 3 is 2, and then the negatives win the tug of war, and so my answer is negative 2. Again, different signs. 7 take away 4 is 3. This time the positives win, and again, remember if there's no sign out here, that means it's positive. So the positives win, so my answer is 3. Negative 6 plus 7, I subtract. 7 take away 6 is 1, and the 7s win. And then the last one is, sorry, that was out of order. 9 take away 5 equals 4, and this the negatives win in this case, and so we get negative 4. Okay, so that's the two rules for adding. So adding the same signs, adding different signs. When we get to integer subtraction, it gets a little confusing. So I'll show you a trick. Again, it's the concept of changing direction that he talked about in the class video. But this is just a little trick to help you remember what you're supposed to do. So what I do is what you do is you change this to addition. And then you change the sign next to it. In math, everything has to be fair. So if you change one thing, you have to change another. The way I remember that is I call it the sucker rule. If I had two kids sitting next to each other and I gave one a sucker, I would have to give the other one a sucker, or the second one's gonna throw a fit, right? So if I give this kid a sucker, I've got to give this kid a sucker. If I change this sign, this operation sign, I have to change the sign next to it. So what used to be 2 minus negative 7 becomes a positive or an add, and then I change that sign to a plus. So it's 2 plus 7, which is 9. This is where you also get this also counts as like a multiplication where you have two negatives equaling a positive. So however you remember it, but my way to remember it is to give this kid a sucker, give this kid a sucker, okay? So watch this. -3 minus -7. So this is going to change to, oh, it's not in the right place. That's supposed to be an addition sign. And then I change that sign too. So I change this sign, change this sign, change, give this kid a sucker, give this kid a sucker. This kid over here does not get a sucker. He's at the neighbors playing and he doesn't know that these guys got suckers. Okay, so you don't change this sign, only the operation sign and the one next to it. So now I apply my addition rules. I have two different signs. I have a negative here and now I have a positive. So when I have different signs, I subtract. 7 take away 3 is 4, and the positives win this tug of war. Okay, here's the next one. 5 take away 7. I change this sign. Change this sign. It used to be positive, now it's negative. Notice they don't have to be the same. I just have to make two changes because they have to balance each other out. I change this, give this kid a sucker, give this kid a sucker. And now again I'm adding opposite signs, different signs, so I'm going to subtract. 7 take away 5 is 2, and the negatives win the tug of war. -8 minus 5. I change this to addition. I change this to negative. Change, sucker, sucker. Now I'm adding the same signs. When you add the same signs, you get a negative. You add them. 8 plus 5 is 13, and it becomes negative because they both were negative. Do a couple more. Again, I'm going to change this to addition. Change that to positive. Change, sucker, sucker. 9 plus 2 is 11. Like that one, that's easy. And the last one's a little trickier. I change this to addition, change this to negative, so change, sucker, sucker. Remember, they don't have to be the same sign. And now I'm adding the same, I'm adding two negatives, which gives me a -15, because 10 plus 5 is 15, and it's negative. Okay? The last thing I'm going to show you is how to remember which direction to move your decimal when you're changing decimals to percents and percents to decimals. Everyone always mixes it up, and so I call this the Dr. Pepper rule. So if you don't live in the United States, you may not know what Dr. Pepper is, but it's a soda. So this is Dr. Pepper. You can just remember decimals and percents. The D is for decimals, the P is for percents. Okay? And that it's also in alphabetical order is another way you could remember it. However you want to remember it, decimals, percents. If I am going from decimals to percents, I'm going to draw an arrow. Notice that it's moving to the right. I'm going from decimals to percents is to the right. That means I'm going to, if I had 0.45, changing this decimal to a percent, I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the right. 1, 2, and then I get rid of the decimal and add a percent sign. Okay, now let's say I want to go the other direction and I need to change a percent, 45%, to a decimal. Now, of course, you already know what the answer is, but if you want to remember which way to go, you use your Dr. Pepper rule. You change it from the left to the right. Okay, we're going from percents to decimals, so I'm moving left this time. I find my decimal. This doesn't have a decimal here. If you don't see a decimal in a number, it's always at the end. So there's my decimal at the end of this number. I move it 2 places to the left, always 2 places. Bump, bump, there it goes. And then I knock off the percent sign, and I get 0.45. So I hope that helps. If you have questions, feel free to come to our my class office hours. Good luck. Thanks.